Hello again, I'm in Kremenchuk. I may upload a few more videos about, for example, the hotel where I stayed first time I was in Kremenchuk. This is a nice hotel, but it's now used as an office, strangely. I went to the restaurant that is located there as well. It belongs to the same. It was together. So the hotel had a very nice outdoor restaurant. It's like a big garden. There's little houses. You see the mess, by the way, in the bad sidewalks. Yeah. That's what it's more like in Ukraine often. And it is not like the UK where it's caused by attitude issues. Here it's more caused by money, lack of money, and that people don't have time for things to clean up or to take proper care as the city council. I'm walking to a park. I've been there, so it was the first time I was in Kremenchuk. I also visited it, some military vehicles, etc. It'll be interesting to see if anything has changed. So I wanted to talk about is propaganda. Russian propaganda from last few years is not actually new. Propaganda about Ukraine, I mean. It has been going for many, many years. Maybe I'll walk through here a bit. And I will give an example, which is a woman I knew from Yalta. So we talked about lots of issues, and I saved all messages from apps such as Viber or email. So I stored everything on my computer. I can have a look what exactly she wrote, and I'm going to publish some of that because it's interesting. It shows how people are indoctrinated even when they are searching for meaning in life. So this woman was found religion in the sense of finding in Christianity for her meaning of life, something that gives her life meaning. Yeah, we're close to the park, and the way she talks about Ukraine changed dramatically in 2014 after the Russian takeover of Crimea. Suddenly, so I told her, for example, what I like in Ukraine: old style buildings, weather in summer is hot, in winter is cold, which is all nice. I just don't like the wishy-washy weather in the Netherlands, where it's unstable, raining quite a lot in summer and winter. And yeah, also buildings, people also, I mean, I like them more than in the Netherlands. What I like especially is humor. This war made that come out a lot as well. Culture, I like the traditional style clothes, for example. But more than that, So she did not criticize any of it, what I said. She didn't say, well, this I don't like about Ukraine, that I don't like. Another person told me, for example, about she was a judge. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's mostly women I talk to, because women are more interesting. So when I get to talking to them, it gives always rise to interesting stories, interesting viewpoints. With men, it's much more simple. Some children's attractions, you can find it in most parks in Ukraine. Oh, I forgot my drink. Oh, I just remembered. I found some really tasty pomegranate soft drink from Schweppes. One with real sugar, not this god-awful sweeteners, which give me an aftertaste. Normal pomegranate juice as fruit juice is also very tasty. I only found that in Ukraine. I don't know if it's more common here or this is perhaps an acquired taste. I don't know. I haven't seen it in the Netherlands, for example. Well, perhaps I didn't look enough. In any case, back to this woman. She knows. She tells what is wrong with Ukraine. Suddenly, she talks about Bandera, about Nazis. Look, this is a woman who's supposedly Christian, which means looking at what's good in people and trying to find out the truth and not going after or following the lies, nonsense from people. And even if they make mistakes, then you're supposed to assume, ah yes, there see it's all the aircraft here. There was a guard, so it might not be open if there's no guard. You can only go in once there's a guard who keeps an eye on everything. So about Bandera, Nazis, etc. She was so unbelievably negative that I wasn't interested in having any further contact with her. Someone else I knew from Kerch, so that is at the tip where the bridge to Russia is connected. She lived there, possibly still lives there. I don't know, since 2015 I lost contact with her because the phone numbers changed, so I had her phone numbers, but they're not working anymore since that time. Yeah, you can't get in, I think. No, you can't get in. Oh, there's a guard, but you're not allowed in. Voedsebak. Okay. So I was in here. Oh, they're asking if they can go in, but not allowed. No, not allowed. That's a pity. There are some plaques with names. I think it was there. Perhaps another section. This is interesting because I walked around with someone who showed me, and some names were crossed out, or one in particular. I thought, okay, someone really has to hate that guy. Perhaps only during weekdays it's open, I don't know. But okay, this is also interesting from a distance. So this woman from Yalta, so this woman from Kerch is okay. I talked with her about the issues in the takeover of Crimea. She said something like, yeah, but if people want it, then... And I said, no, people in a region cannot just simply decide to be with another country, because that destabilizes the original country, takes away some of their economic possibilities, let's state it that way. It influences the other country negatively to take away just some parts. No country in the world accepts that. Spain doesn't accept the Basques just leaving. The Netherlands wouldn't accept if the Frisians, so there's Friesland, which is a province of the Netherlands, if they want to be separate from the Netherlands would not accept that. No country in the world accepts it. And so I said that to her, and she said, well, she wanted to be with Russia, the other woman also. They thought they would get a better life. That's the whole reason. Yeah. And that's logical, but I said it doesn't work like that, because you destabilize the other country. So you cannot just do that. And there is actually in international law, from what someone else told me, no, he wrote it on a comment somewhere, and it makes perfect sense, which is that if a region wants to secede from a country, then there's a certain, in international law, a regulation that, for example, you need to see how many people want it. But not just in that region, also in the rest of the country. And there needs to be a certain number of people, a certain percentage, who accept or agree that the region splits off from that country. And of course that was not followed in 2014. The referendum was also fake, in the sense that all the pro-Ukrainian voices were intimidated. Further, a problem is well, it doesn't really matter. It's just invalid. The whole thing was invalid because of all the reasons I stated. No referendum was given in the rest of the country. Intimidation in the rest. Oh yeah. One other point that I wanted to make. All the Russians say, yeah, it was Russian always. No, it wasn't. It was Tatars who lived there, and a lot of them were deported by the Soviet Union. And before that, whatever. Who cares? Russia has always been imperialistic and barbaric, so they certainly should not deserve to get anything. So I lost contact with the woman in Kerch, but yeah, she could have found me. But what one woman mentioned years ago was the following, which was interesting. People who want to stay in touch will stay in touch. And there are, of course, always... let's go there. Oh, maybe it was there. Where the names are crossed out, or at least one was really badly crossed out. Yeah, she obviously, it was not important enough to stay in touch. The woman in Yalta, why didn't she tell me earlier what she really felt about problems in Ukraine? Well, it's because she wanted something from me. Then after the Russian takeover, she felt more free to state her mind, because being in Ukraine, criticizing Ukraine is then, I suppose, not quite useful. Let's see if it was here. No, I think it was more recent people. I don't see anything damaged, but could have repaired it, of course. Might have been something else, or it was repaired. Well, okay, doesn't really matter. So there you have some track where people or children can ride on vehicles, etc., and learn traffic rules, or put them in use while riding. So this woman came with all these criticisms about Ukraine. And earlier she didn't do that. Why did she do that? Why did she talk about Bandera? Well, the Ukrainians worship Bandera. We think that's really bad. Why? Bandera was the guy who fought both the Nazis and the Soviets. Both are oppressive regimes. What this tells you is very important, which is that the Russians still identify with the Soviet Union, even though that was a repressive regime. There are some good points of the Soviet Union, but taking away freedom to discuss anything, to choose things, is not good. And economically not allowing much choice is also bad. It goes against human nature. There was a recent, several months ago, sort of discussion from Cambridge Union. A few people came to talk. Some comedian woman, really stupid woman, made some uninteresting points. One guy mentioned other things. He was completely uninsightful, except for one thing. He says that socialism goes against human nature. That's true. This is why socialism doesn't work. Capitalism also doesn't work. You need to restrict capitalism, otherwise you get monopolies, etc. But socialism doesn't work because it goes against human nature. People want to achieve something, but also most people are selfish. They want something for themselves. They want more money, blah blah blah. They want to achieve something, and that's in a monetary sense. Competition drive is also important. So what you need to use for an efficient society, if you want a technological progression, is to allow that, which works best in capitalism. But you need to restrict capitalism, of course, as I mentioned, which is always done, although not enough in some cases, to make competition possible. Which is, for example, removing monopolies, so splitting up two big companies as well. There's one issue. And so that's what he said. Socialism goes against human nature. Capitalism makes use of it. This is also what I mentioned in the comments, is that on a previous video where I talked about Peter Hitchens, namely that, we'll go here, that socialist societies such as the Amish work, but only by offloading their problems onto the rest of society. And they don't strive for technological development, so they don't need anything. So if you have a simple life, and in that sense it works, but still it doesn't quite work. Well, with capitalism, with normal society, you have problems as well. But you could see, for example, that the technological development in the Soviet Union was not anywhere near that of the West, and it was very inefficient, polluting, more so than the West. That's because of not using people efficiently. Right, so I'm talking about various other subtopics but related, which is this woman gave me all these nonsense arguments suddenly. But of course, usually people do not just change. It's not that this indoctrination effort started briefly ago, a short time ago. No, that's been going on for years. And that also makes clear why why it happened, all these stories, is because the issue is that the Russians feel as if they're Soviets. So they don't like criticism of the Soviet Union. There is indeed even or was already in about 2007, you could see it in Jonathan Dimbleby's TV series or book about Russia, that there were people longing back to the Soviet Union times because they had status, for example. And this is the problem. Bandera was against the Soviets, which were a repressive criminal regime which caused the starvation of millions of Ukrainians, the Holodomor, and he fought them. And the current day Russians, at least, must have been for a long time, because this woman was, I think, 30 or so in 2014, so it was not something new to her. These stories have been told by Russians for ages, probably decades or more, about how bad the Ukrainians are because Bandera for them is a hero. Well, he fought the bad guys. And the bad guys were the Soviets, the Soviet regime. And the Russians don't like that. They still identify with the Soviet regime, which shows you their mindset, which is still Soviet era, which explains also why this war continues and can go on. They are just simplistic followers. They just don't think, and it's very weird because the interesting thing about Russians and Ukrainians is that they're much more philosophical. Not everyone, obviously, but that's something I noticed in the TV series and what other people noticed about Russia, but also about Ukraine. People are much more philosophical about life. And yet in Russia there's this defeatist attitude. I guess it's defeated or it's indoctrinated. Russia now is more like a complete cult. No thought is allowed to be different than what the cult leader says. Like North Korea. Such regimes should be considered a crime against humanity. So they enforce views which are nonsensical. They don't allow free thought, free speech. Such regimes are just illegitimate. That's it for now. Bye.